Welcome to episode 4 of The Hard Truth About B2B eCommerce. I'm your co-host, Isaiah Bollinger from Trellis. With me is my other co-host, Tim.
Hey, everybody. It's nice to see you today. Welcome.
So before we get into it, I want to mention our lovely sponsor, Punch Out To Go, a company that we've worked with over the years, kind of a mainstay in the B2B e-commerce space. And what Punch Out To Go is, for people that aren't aware, it's a global B2B integration company specializing in connecting commerce platforms to e-procurement and ERP applications. So Punch Out To Go essentially is an iPaaS solution that links business applications to automate the flow of purchasing around all sorts of different data. So they can immediately reduce integration complexities for things like Punch Out Catalog, which is the name of Punch Out To Go, and then electronic purchase orders, e-invoices, and other B2B sales order automation documents in order to accelerate business results. So if you're in B2B, you should learn about Punch Out To Go, see if they're a good solution for you, because there's a high likelihood they can automate a lot of the back office processes, save you a boatload of money, and make you a much more modern company in today's digital world. So I'm excited to announce our guest, Michael Powers. So Michael, we've been in touch through the Infor community for a little while now, and you're now the new director of e-commerce for Alaska Rubber Group, and have been in e-commerce for a long time. But like to hear from the horse's mouth, maybe a little bit more about yourself and everything that you've been doing.
Welcome,
Absolutely. Thank you, Tim. Isaiah, I'm thrilled to be on today. It's one of those things where 6 years ago, I wish there was a podcast like this that I'd be able to get on and listen to thought leaders that have gone into the trenches when you talk about B2B, specifically B2B e-commerce in distribution or manufacturing. So I wish you guys all the luck with this podcast. And, Brady's a great guy at Punch Out To Go. So again, thrilled to be here. So, for us, for me personally, I think what has happened is over the last 6 years, I've seen a major uptick or real opportunity for B2B e-commerce for manufacturers and distributors, right? And the reason why I'm saying that is these are typically family-run businesses, third, fourth generation, many of which aren't strong in an IT department or do not have digital leaders within the four walls of their business. And, for me, 6 years ago, being hired as the e-commerce manager at Hill & Marks, a Janssen distributor in upstate New York, I really had the opportunity to come in and start from the ground up. And Isaiah, as you mentioned, as a Inform SXE ERP customer at Hill & Marks, we realized quite quickly that we need to move on from the storefront product that they had at the time. And why did we want to do that? We wanted a platform that was going to allow us to provide Punch-Out Catalog to our customers. Cornell University, RPI, large hospital systems are even 4 or 5 years ago were looking for distributors and suppliers to hook up to their intranet or their e-shop. So Punch Out was actually one of the boxes I need to check off. But 6 years ago, I needed to go out to the marketplace and find a replacement for Infor SXE storefront. Needed to find somebody that could provide us with punch-out services. And then the most important thing was we needed somebody to help us with product data enrichment. Our website did not have high-res images, accurate descriptions. So the fact of the matter is, if you're opening up your website, you need to provide accurate product data for your end user to buy from. So those were some of the things in our journey in the very beginning at Hill & Marks that we were looking for in the marketplace. And I was able to identify a couple of vendors in the marketplace, and I decided to sign with Unilog in Philadelphia. And they helped us with all 3 of those services. But for me, as the e-commerce leader within the business, it was it was eye-opening to see how the end users were so engaged with us in a digital presence. And so that actually, I think, attributed to not only a fantastic customer adoption strategy and getting existing and new customers on board, but when we went live in January 2017, Timothy and Isaiah, first 6 months we were really going after our customer base to educate them, and it was a great journey there. And in my time, close to 6 years there, I left and we were approaching 30% of total revenue
Wow.
through our e-commerce platform. And
So 0 to 30, you went from 0 to 30 at the time. It was 0.
So we had 14 to 15%, and
On
that
the
was
storefront.
that was coming from a storefront, which was basically one web page locked in with items, rarely any descriptions to leaving. And as a distributor in the $70 to $90 million range, you're approaching 30%. It was I'm really proud of that accomplishment, and the team at Hill & Marks, both from the family, from the leadership team to my team that was there, everybody was bought in because they just saw the trajectory of not only adoption but revenue going through it. So that's
awesome.
That's where I felt like I really got excited and passionate about B2B e-commerce. And, previous to that, I was in a web development firm in Saratoga Springs, but man, getting into B2B e-commerce for a distribution business was exciting.
Gotcha. So you've gotten, digital, your pre-B2B e-commerce, you had digital experience way before
exactly,
that.
for the last 10, 15 years.
And you think that helped a lot with your kind of learning curve to get into B2B e-commerce,
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
One of the areas I think it lent itself was when we looked at product data, realizing that organic search is extremely important, and making sure that if we're going to be displaying product data on our website, how do we make that content unique to other distributors that are selling the exact same product? So how do we become unique? Doing product videos on YouTube that no other distributor is doing on a particular SKU, making sure we're using the blog section of our website to do product spotlights, and making sure all of that rich content is wrapped into our platform along with our product data. So I do believe, whether you're somebody that's working at a web development firm or B2C firm that has a good understanding of organic search and how to drive customers to websites, B2B e-commerce is an area that they definitely should look at.
Awesome. Well, yeah, that's a great introduction. And so now you're at Alaska Rubber Group, so maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that's where for me, I got extremely passionate about B2B e-commerce. And then due to the success I had at Hill & Marks, actually proud to say we won the Digital Innovator Award in 2019 by Modern Distribution Management. So we are one of only, I believe, 10 distributors in North America to achieve that. And so I was extremely, extremely honored to get that. And I think based off the success and my, my passion to grow, I had an opportunity come to me, and that was the Alaska Rubber Group. And the Alaska Rubber Group is a hydraulic hose and fitting distributor in the Pacific Northwest. That's an employee-owned company. And the great thing about this team is that they, at the highest level, came together and realized to be successful in the future, they need to start now with their digital transformation. And so I was approached by the team there and had fantastic calls with everybody there. And yeah, it's been an unbelievable ride. And I started right around I want to say beginning of March. And we're having weekly meetings with the team, and I can't wait to get this project going.
Awesome.
How much of their business is e-commerce at this point?
At this point, zero.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood.
So, Timothy, that for me is one of the reasons why I'm very passionate and excited about the opportunity, because, gentlemen, I think the barrier to entry in B2B e-commerce has come down.
Yeah.
5-6 years ago, it was a very expensive. It was as expensive as opening up a new branch of your business, right? Now, things have changed. There's solutions out there such as a punch out to go, or Unilog, Insight Software, there's players, and even B2C players, Isaiah, that are now targeting B2B
Yeah,
e-commerce.
absolutely.
And that has brought the threshold down. And so I think, with the opportunity with more vendors, more tools, and things such as AI and voice, I'm passionate about not only building an e-commerce platform in a website, but what other commerce tactics can we do? And one of the areas I mentioned to you is Alaska Rubber Group services the oil, marine, and rigging and lifting businesses in the Pacific Northwest. Those are not traditional brick and mortar businesses. These are end users out in the field that are doing work. How can we leverage technology or a progressive mobile app so that they're able to quickly reorder through a mobile app from a job? Or if something is broken or it breaks on them, can we engage with them via a mobile app to have them show us what has broken, and we could actually get into the shop and repair that product for them and get it to them? It's time and money that is lost on these job sites. What can B2B e-commerce for us do for them where they don't have to shut down? And I'm really excited about that.
It's awesome. Cool. Well, let's start getting into some of the questions. I think you've got quite a bit of experience to help everyone with. So one of the big and you made a great point that the barrier is down, and I truly believe that, like, for the most part, you can get into it in one way or another with these tools like BigCommerce, Shopify, Magento, Insight, Unilog. In theory, you could stand up one of these tools relatively cheap, but getting what you want could be expensive depending on what you want, right? Like, how complicated that is. So I really think the barrier is more the internal sophistication of the company to use these tools, right? And make the most out of these tools. So what do you think the cultural challenges are preventing these companies from doing that? We both know it's possible, right? And
Yes.
Why aren't they doing it?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I think it lends itself to I think culture is a big reason why it's not happening. Because you have to realize, and speaking from a third generation business in Hill and Marks that was founded in 1906, that has been very successful in their business model of having salespeople in the streets doing face-to-face. I think there's a lot of distributors that still believe that model can work in this age, that face-to-face relationship. So I do believe sometimes, there's a lot of B2B businesses that are still believing that the way they've done business for many, many years or decades could still be relevant in this day and age. And I think we're seeing it right now with the disruption of the COVID-19 and how companies are implementing work from home policies, that I think now organizations are realizing we need to invest in technology, people in our business. And Isaiah, the reason why I think culture is also has been maybe a hindrance to B2B e-commerce, but is now changing, is a lot of these businesses do not have an IT or e-commerce leader within the four walls. It's not an established department. And I see you on LinkedIn. You're very active. I see some of the conversations you're getting in, and there's a lot of conversation about where do these e-commerce leaders, where do you find them? How do you get them into businesses? And I think culture is a big part of it now. I do believe that finding the right person, right seat, because of everything that's going on, is going to lend itself to some great B2B e-commerce leaders, not only in manufacturing and distributing, but other B2B businesses.
Awesome. Yeah. So just to touch on that a little bit more before we go on to the next one, what are you seeing as, some of those common political issues, like, or internal politics, or whatever you want to call it, like, do you see some sort of like strife within the company of like maybe one person's like, hey, we need to hire this person, and then the other owner is like, no, like, and there's kind of like internal battles of who to hire or what to invest in. And have you seen much of that, or?
I have, in some ways, yes, because, you know, when I was building out, you know, as the digital leader for some time, you know, and going out to the marketplace and selecting the platform, the question always comes up in a meeting is, what is the ROI? What is the ROI of this e-commerce journey that we're on? And so before I can come in like any other, whether it's HR or operations, I can't just come in and say, listen, we need to hire XYZ, right? The fact is there is sometimes conversations on, you're building an e-commerce team. Well, if somebody's going to be hired to manage your PIM and your product data, there's a lot of executives in B2B businesses that have no idea what a PIM or a CMS is. Why are we hiring this person again? What are they going to be doing with product data? How does that affect us? Yeah, I've been in those conversations, and at the end of the day, you're engaging with customers and showing the team not only the percentage of revenue that starts growing from having an e-commerce platform, but also realizing you can't just build an e-commerce platform and put it live. It's a 24-hour, 7-day, 365-day digital salesperson that you need to massage and invest and train. And that's where I think, you know, having, you know, conversations not only with sales leaders, but the executive team in painting what the strategy has to be is very important. Isaiah, I had a conversation with one of our top sales reps the first day I was on the job, and he came to me and he said, just, you know, congratulations. I'm glad you're on the team. However, I am the website. I don't need a website. My customers don't need to know about our website. I'm the guy. And
Wow.
so, you know, you're talking somebody that's been doing it for 40 years that makes a substantial amount of money in his world, as completely looking at the strategy as something that would cannibalize him or put him out of business. And remember, Andy Hoare, when he was at Forrester, did the B2B e-commerce, the death of the B2B salesperson. That was real conversations I was having where that friction was there. That friction was like, hey, you're investing in a website, but I am the website. But what I will tell you is that person, you know, 6 months after being live, gentlemen, realized going into a school system and sitting down with the buyer, who happened to be who replaced his key contact. The first question they asked was, do you have a mobile app or a website I can place orders on? I prefer, I don't want to waste your time. And his answer of me being the guy wasn't sufficient enough for that customer. And so I will tell you, I did receive a call from that salesperson after that customer encounter, and he said, what do I need to know about this website? And I said, you don't need to know everything, but I'll sit down with you and show you how to
Wow.
register, how to build a shopping list, how to check out, because I want that salesperson to know if they need me, I'll do webinars, I will do customer calls. As a digital leader in a business like that, it's my role to make sure those people are comfortable with what they do. It's my role to also be the one that needs to make it easy for them to adopt to our technology.
And you know, I think you've really hit on something very interesting there. I mean, with the culture and the politics, I formerly, I've been head of e-commerce for B2C and B2B businesses, and some that are both, right? And so one of those businesses that I came into, I was the first e-commerce person dealing with B2B. And it was, you know, all of the cultural and political things that, you know, that you're touching on here. But I think you just underlined, I think one of the success metrics is, you know, being a part of the team and being part of the answer, you know, really helping people and listening. Because as soon as everyone realized that I was there to, you know, to help and to make sure that the sales teams that existed were, you know, needed more tools to succeed, and that I was helping to, you know, get them that, then everybody was happy and it all worked out. You know, when I was the outside threat or whatever they were
Yeah.
envisioning, that was a different thing.
And Timothy, it was a trust issue, right? There was
Yeah,
zero trust because what you're about to do is something that within that organization not a lot of people know about. They can't speak to it, right?
exactly.
And so you constantly, and again, had a sidebar conversation with Andy Hoare at B2B Next,
Mhm.
and I had the opportunity to speak there a couple of times. And Andy would say to me, Mike, what you're encountering is the lone wolf syndrome. And the lone wolf is the one that wants to be part of that pack, but the pack needs that lone wolf to continuously prove itself. And I had to, on maybe twice a week in the first year, continue to sell the strategy and why.
Mhm.
And really it came down to the end user, the B2B buyer. We need to be approaching them and having a strategy for them to make sure we're meeting their needs.
Yeah, I mean, just to build on that for a second, I was kind of leading into sort of success and failure because I think
Yes.
you're already bringing up one of the next topics that Isaiah and I wanted to dive into for our listeners. And what really makes a successful B2B e-commerce operation versus the ones that fail. We're talking about culture and we're talking about politics and overcoming some of those things or learning how to really be a team player. But what are the other things that matter to make you successful or that cause you to fail?
So it's a great segue because I think I learned early on in the process that you need to go over and beyond to make sure you feel people can be involved in the project.
Hmm.
Over communicating in the beginning, I think, is extremely important, right? Because the more you're talking about it, the more you're asking folks to be beta testers so that they can test the product or the product customer information. I think where B2B e-commerce leaders may fail is they'll get into an opportunity. They'll identify it, they'll do a SWOT analysis, they'll decide what they need to do, and they run out a strategy without sitting down and meeting with key stakeholders in many
Mhm.
different departments, including key customers. And so, for me, and I want to talk about what's happening now. I am in 3 to 5 calls per week with my COO, my head of sales, my head of purchasing. I have folks that are behind the counter that I'll put an open invite out to a meeting and they are all participating because it's important for me to have their buy-in early on before we even go live with the website.
Sure.
Because I want them 3 months before go live to have created 10,000 shopping lists in our beta website and they understand it. They're already talking about it. So I think, personally having gone through it, I think, at my first opportunity at Hill and Marks, I wish I went back and did that sooner. Whereas now I feel like the executive team I work with is bought into this digital transformation. They talk about this as the new digital branch for the business. Everybody's on board. And so I think where you can be very successful is making sure you're putting yourself out there and get input from people, and but make sure you have folks feel like they're part of the strategy.
Nothing should be shock, right? I mean, that's a key thing. Nothing should be shocking to the stakeholders. It's like, what is this?
No,
What's up?
no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I actually, I think you guys will find some value in this conversation. So I hosted a workshop at B2B Next last year, and there was a gentleman in it, and we had a similar conversation about the successes and failures of, a B2B e-commerce leader. And this gentleman, we're in a kind of a round table, and he was drinking his water, and at the end we were kind of just had a free flowing conversation. And so he puts it down. He's like, I feel like I'm at a group meeting. And for me, it is so important because I'm a B2C e-commerce leader. I worked for, I've done Shopify, I've done Magento, I've been very successful in B2C, in particular with fashion, right? And he was based out of Brooklyn, and he had a fantastic opportunity to work for a distributor in the Midwest. and had moved to his family, and he moved out there, and he did not realize how important an ERP connectivity, the ERP within a B2B business. He felt like the experience in, firing up a Shopify website, but really focusing on UI and UX and personalization was going to get them over the hump. And, at the end of the conversation, he said to me, he's like, I just didn't understand how complex that ERP is to these businesses, and how if you're going to be creating a website, you need to make sure AR, invoices, open orders, all of these things that are very important to a B2B business, you need to make sure you're working with a vendor that understands that. So
Yeah.
it was an interesting conversation that I thought would lend itself well to this one.
So I think to sum it up, and I'm going to get into the next thing, but I think that's a really good point, and something that we've invested a lot into is, although we're e-commerce, I think we're very ERP savvy. Like, we understand ERPs really well because we had to, as an agency, to understand B2B e-commerce. But would you say it's fair to say that to succeed, you kind of need to build this like e-commerce culture that believes in it? It's not just like the side project, but you also need a leader like yourself who's not just, oh, I can build you a pretty Shopify site, but actually is technical enough to like work with the IT team, understand the ERP, how that's going to get into the e-commerce platform, and kind of how it's all going to come together operation. Like, you need this like, I would say technical leader to some degree. I know you're not necessarily like a software engineer by trade, but you understand.
That is it. You nailed it. And Isaiah, you and I have talked about this many times with Infor SXE and what you're doing. You're absolutely like, you could be considered a B2B e-commerce technical project manager in the build phase, right? Like, you really are, because your company's depending on you to be the portal, or that connection to not only the e-commerce vendor, but what happens if you're outsourcing your IT department? You need to be that leader, that technical leader that understands all of that. I had a fantastic person that was our system analyst, who was our SXE analyst, but punch outs, integration, and some of the other things we needed to do, I would lead that with other, Unilog and our project managers. So yes, you nailed it. You just described a leader that is, it's not a side project, but they don't have to be they don't need to be a developer, so to speak. They need to understand the complexity of the ecosystem and have the mindset of the strategy to get it live and customers adopted to it.
Yep. Awesome. So where do you see the future of B2B e-commerce going? Like, I think you kind of already alluded to it with this, new experience around mobile and being out in the field. And I'm just kind of curious to hear your thoughts. You saw kind of the what we could call the 2015 or 2014 to 2020, where now the barrier to entry is lower. Like, what's the next 5 years? People are getting up and running now.
Players like Trellis, Timothy and Isaiah, sitting down, connecting with B2B e-commerce leaders in businesses, understanding the complexity of their businesses, and taking the UI, UX, and personalization skills and that expertise in B2C that is lacking in B2B e-commerce. That's where I see it's going. And I think you guys are one. I've seen many agencies, B2C agencies developing B2B consulting parts of their business, because I do believe there is still a major opportunity in B2B e-commerce to improve personalization and UI and UX, because, at the end of the day, a lot of these platforms are highly customizable, right? Or customized from, they go through their SWOT, they go through their build out phase, and it has to be this exactly. Whereas in B2C, you can widgetize your website. I want to pull this in, or I want to offer this for promotions. That's lacking in B2B e-commerce. So the fact is, if you guys have the ability to bring that type of, engagement in, is going to be fabulous.
Yeah. So you could see it being like kind of a better user experience and modern experience, but then potentially even like at a company account. Like, we're doing more with company accounts,
Yes.
corporate accounts functionality. Magento's really invested a lot into that. So that's the main area that we've been working with that. But we're seeing it in other platforms too, where you have this awesome like corporate accounts functionality where you can build like an entire tree of people within one organization on the front end using the site. And then they might potentially, they could have their own slightly tweaked, version for that, big organization that has their own needs. If it's like a top 10 customer or whatever it is, I could see that being worth investing in at a per customer level. We're actually, it makes me realize we're actually, I don't know why I haven't touched on this yet. We've been actually doing multi-site for a lot of Magento sites where we've built a core infrastructure and then we'll spin off individualized sites for specific customers. And that's been really successful.
That's great.
Yeah, so I think you're absolutely right, but it's still the early stages. I don't think we're just tapping into the very early, like we could be doing so much more with that,
So, it's I'm glad you brought that up because, I had firsthand experience of, going to one of our largest university customers, and what you just described, the functionality you just described is something that procurement departments within a large scale customer in B2B is looking for. What do I mean by that? If you're servicing, if you're, this is speaking from experience as a distributor, you launch an e-commerce platform, you have a university customer, they could have upward 300 to 500 end users at 300 to 500 individual ship-to addresses. So the fact of the matter is, right, and now there's another layer saying that we have 200 to 300 end users that we want to buy product, but we want all of their orders to be approved. So now they need to go to purchasing or the finance department at Cornell University or the University of Rochester. So if you build a platform that allows for you to manage user roles for approval or budgeting, I think it's similar to what you guys are doing with your, your end user specific catalogs. And that's the type of stuff in B2B e-commerce that customers are looking for.
Yeah, and a lot of that's out there. It's just kind of piecing it all together and getting it all to work. And
that's it.
That's the hard part, right? Like people underestimate. I think where companies fall down, honestly, is they hire Trellis, or I'm just using us as an example. They hire a Trellis and a digital agency, and then they go, "Oh, build me the site," but they don't realize they would get so much more out of their work if they actually logged in and actually learned all the. Most of these companies don't even log in to learn everything that these platforms have to offer, because these platforms can do a lot, but rarely do we see that they're internally learning everything that the platform can do. So then
to that point, Isaiah, too, and a lot of these folks, the same exact person you just laid out for me is also a person that doesn't take the time to survey their customer base or do a customer segmentation and realize the different end users that are looking for different ways to shop or buy from you.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
And Isaiah, you're bringing up learning, and then, Mike, you're bringing up, customers. And I think this is, again, another segue into something that's a hot topic for us and a big area of interest is really, learning. Like, where are you learning from B2C, for example, to apply to B2B? Because I'll give you a couple things in my research recently that are of interest, and see if this comes up for you guys. But I saw recently a story about drones, using drones for remote locations to look for QR codes on, let's say, a pipeline or some infrastructure. And so the QR codes were set there intentionally to know like the particular part and whatever was needed.
Yes.
But then the drone goes back to them, and it's sending that information wherever it needs to automate an order, that needs to get done. So things like that, of course, are playing on image recognition, QR, and you had mentioned voice-activated ordering earlier. How are you picking up on, all of these things, some of which are more developed in B2C, some of which, but now, here you are in this major B2B situation. How do you pick and choose from among those successes or experiments to use them for yourself?
So That's a great question, because we're in a time and age where information can be overwhelming. There's so much information out about strategy. Listen, guys, LinkedIn is taken off, right? There's so much data. There's so much information out there. I personally try to identify the thought leaders or subject matter experts in B2B e-commerce and see what their take is on that, and kind of listen to how they feel that that's going to impact the business. So for me personally, Jonathan Bain at Real Results Marketing, very, very smart gentleman who I think has done, early on, I would look at his state of B2B e-commerce in the MDM.com, Modern Distribution Management's website, because every single year that was a thorough report, not only on platforms but also technologies, and really some fantastic data on how B2B customers buy. The other, I think, is Andy Hoare, somebody that I look at, digitalcommerce360.com. So I'm trying to look at resources in the marketplace, because if I go straight to LinkedIn and think about how AI and VR and all these different things that are happening in e-commerce, that's fantastic, and maybe there's some stuff I'd like to look at. But at the end of the day, I want to look at the strategies or the new innovations that B2B folks believe can be impactful in the near future.
Gotcha. So you're trying to kind of pick and choose, because there's so much in B2C.
There is, and I think just the fact is with B2C, but again, that's a massive opportunity for B2B e-commerce. The UI, the personalization. And listen, we're talking about drones, right?
Yep.
In our business, how great would that be? I mean, we sell rigging and lifting supplies to helicopters in Alaska that take trees out, right? And the fact of the matter is, what can us as a distributor and manufacturer in the Pacific Northwest, how can we leverage drone technology? How can we leverage a video stream that allows for us to certify product? And that's through a mobile app. So I try to do my best there's a lot out there. I try to look at, thought leaders in the industry. I do look at, is it Toby, the CEO of Shopify?
Yep.
I love listening to
he's
podcasts.
awesome.
So I'm listening there, but at the end of the day, I really want to stay in my lane, so to speak, to realize who are the guys that in B2B e-commerce, specifically distribution, what are the B2C technologies that are going to be winners?
And one of the things I would just add here too, and it's not really meant to be a plug, but that's really something Isaiah and I and Trellis in general really care about, is trying to create more thought leadership, and to bring thought leaders together to discuss these things. I mean, I'm on the Forrester Global Marketing Research Panel, and I do a lot of things through them. So my name's not attached to reports and stuff, but it's meant to condense. You're taking knowledge from all these different areas and to condense it into something useful. And the folks that you mentioned, Jonathan, 3 cheers to Jonathan. I mean, it's great. I mean, a lot of these folks are great. We're just trying to be laser focused, I guess, if you will, on this area. There are a lot of things we could do, but this is something that there is a need. And bringing folks like yourself in who are working on this live, we just want to have that conversation.
We want to open up the door. I feel like B2B e-commerce is this hidden secret to a lot of companies, and they just have no idea what to do.
That's why I was excited about this, because and Timothy, the fact that you even brought that up is exciting to me, because Isaiah, you and I have talked about this with Infor SXE, right? We talked about specifically. You guys have a massive opportunity. I'm so excited that you're doing a e-commerce podcast, and whether you take clips of this and put it towards your YouTube channel, there is leaders that are still looking for this information, right? I'm talking about those guys that we mentioned specifically because of the distribution and B2B e-commerce. But at the end of the day, you're going to bridge a gap, and doing something like this and having the opportunity to speak with you, I know you guys are headed in the right direction, and I'm excited to see the other guests with different perspectives on B2B e-commerce on here as well.
Well,
yeah,
One
exciting.
last thing I just got to interject here because I think it's worth it. Is Mike, we're going to invite you back probably 1 to 2 years from now because we want to see
Okay.
that arc going up like this.
Yes.
That's what we
Yes.
want, like this.
Yes.
You're like 50% of sales are online.
That's
Everyone
it.
Timothy, I'm going to hold you to the drone. I have to implement drone technology in Alaska.
We're going to do it. I'll send you more information.
Oh, please do. Because you think about it, though. Like, by the way, you're saying that in a way that, this company that we've been in discussions with, and I'll send a link to. I would like actually your input on them, because that type of technology where a drone that it goes to the top of a rig or crane at a job site that can read a QR code and either recertify the equipment or identify a part that needs to be replaced so you can place an order. That's where everything's heading. And so I'm excited about that stuff.
I love it.
Yes.
Back to you, Isaiah. Sorry.
Yeah. So we're gonna run out of time here, but we're kind of already touching on it. And you're talking to all these B2B leaders. So what do you think the biggest challenge is for specifically, because you have a lot of experience in distribution, for B2B e-commerce and distribution? What's the biggest challenge in the next 5 to 10 years for companies like Alaska? There's a lot of companies out there like Alaska that they're at zero. That's a daunting task. How do you go from 0 to 30 or 0 to 50? I think 50 is where I see the market going, getting to eventually 50% online.
Yes. Yes. It's coming together as an executive team or ownership and realizing that they need to build the big digital branch of their business. They have to they need to look at this as if they're building a new brick and mortar store. And they realize that they need to, they need to do their best to attract e-commerce talent. Specifically, it may not have to be B2B. It may be some, web design. I came from a web development firm, but they have to be open to bringing in people that historically the business never really had, right? And how to manage them, and how give them the ability to lead and bring in tools that will allow their business to take off, because I think that's where I think they're going to win. There are a lot at zero. It's still a conversation in executive meetings because they're seeing other people doing it, but they're saying who inside the four walls of this building can do it now. And typically they may not have that person, and then they say, who do we know that can get that person? And both of those tend to be pain points.
Yeah, I think you bring up I think that's such a good point. And I think it's getting that internal talent that, like we discussed, can understand both the ERP side, the e-com side, kind of bring it all operationally together. And I think the challenge that that they're going to face is that, tech talent's, in high demand. Anyone good, even with coronavirus, obviously this is a good time to go after people right now, although just because obviously there's more unemployed than ever in a long time. But generally it's hard to get good tech talent. So, and a lot of that tech talent gravitates towards like an Airbnb or, Amazon just, here, we'll give you 200 grand or 300 grand. Here's a bunch of stock options. What would you recommend, your family-owned distributor to kind of get someone like you and make that attractive versus, you might be able to get an offer from, who knows how many other awesome tech companies.
Listen, you're right. And for me, I think it goes back to, I saw this as a major opportunity and we talked about it just now, taking a business. I'm extremely proud of the ability, not only of the, being allowed to get in there and implement a strategy and build it and see the success of it. I think you need to find somebody that wants to be an owner, that wants to take a project and realize that they're digitally transforming a business. It's not just about a salary. It's about building something from the ground up. It's taking a one-person team and yourself to now delegating and leading and building and growing that team. For me, and I saw Timothy, you nodding, it becomes a passion project.
It is.
And so, could you, for me, say, hey, I have all this experience at Hill and Marks, and why don't I just go and look at something else that is already a mature platform and focus on maybe taking over a team or managing a team or focusing on
go work at Granger.
Yeah, and do that. For me, it's a passion project. I love this. So I'm looking at this opportunity of that. I have a team that came to me and said, we're all in, 100%, 150% all in. We need a guy like you. We want you to lead it, and we're going to do it. Whatever you need, we're here for you. For me, that's bigger than any just paycheck in the world. It's to be part of something bigger than yourself and build it with the team. And especially as an employee-owned company, this 10, 15, 25 years from now, these employees are owners of the company. They want this to succeed. And so that's for me. I think it's different for other businesses, but if you're looking for a passion project, if you're looking for something that you feel you can get in there, roll up and that's the other thing too, guys. You need to, as a digital leader, it's great building a team, but in the beginning, you have to get your hands dirty. You have to do everything from, managing the not only the company's expectations, but also the client's expectations. You're going to be the one that needs to focus on how do I identify 50,000 SKUs to enrich on our website. You're going to be the one that's deciding that in the beginning. And so you got to have a very hands-on approach. But
you're going to be in the spreadsheets, right? Like you're going to be
absolutely
in the spreadsheets, logging into the admin panel of the software you choose. Unilog, Magento, Insight.
Isaiah, listen. Today, I can be in a conversation with my team, and they understand that I probably don't have a lot of product knowledge on hose fittings or hydraulic hoses, and the fact that the e-commerce strategy that I have, they are coming to the table and say, we're going to help you with the product information. We're going to help you with the product expertise. Let us identify manufacturers and product categories and who we should be onboarding onto our website. It's a cohesive project, and that's really important as well. You can't get into one of these businesses and think you're going to run off. And you said it, Isaiah, it's not a side project. No. And I think a lot of businesses treat an e-commerce leader, specifically in B2B, as, okay, go off and do what you need to do, and we can't wait for go live. It can't be that way. And listen, I'm going to flip it back on you, and I know we're running out of time, but what are you seeing when you sit down with the customer, they sign on for you to do work, and then when you get to the difficult parts of the conversation, they're expecting a Walmart.com or a Amazon.com website, but they're not willing to step up when it comes to investing in the platform. Those are hard conversations.
Yeah, we're trying to get better at that, because as an agency, I think a lot of agencies make this mistake. They're like, yeah, we'll do the work. They want the sale, they want to get the project. Right. And we're seeing, honestly, how B2C, it's a lot easier to do that because the projects are a lot more straightforward. With B2B, we have to be a lot more careful because we're so reliant on that person being able to get us the product data or whatever it is. And we don't want to be 2 years into the project and we still don't have the product data. Yes. And, we're getting yelled at, but it's really out of our hands because we can't, get all their product data. That's not necessarily like our core job as a company. So I've been trying to basically question the hell out of these companies and literally I'm talking to one where I told them, I was like, I'm concerned that you guys haven't thought through the operations. They have, and they almost didn't go with us because they thought that we couldn't do the project, which I'm like, and I'm trying to communicate. I'm like, it's not that we can't build you an awesome front end. It's that I'm concerned we're going to build you an awesome front end and you guys haven't thought through the ERP integration. They're going to use, in this case, it's Epicor. I don't know if you're familiar with Epicor as an ECC module from Magento, but they never gave us the opportunity to talk to ECC. They want something really complicated. And ECC does certain things. It's a product that's just built to do a certain thing. And I'm like, we need a conversation with them to even see if it can handle all these customization. The due diligence isn't there. And I'm trying to just really kind of get them to realize hey guys, there's a lot of thought that hasn't gone into this operational, workflow of the data going back and forth and what you want on the consumer experience and what this integration may or may not be able to do because we didn't build ECC, right? Like we're kind of at the whim of what Epicor is going to be able to do with that. And so there's all these different things that need to come together. And I'm trying to get companies to really like take a step back and say, hey, like you're not ready for this. This is going to fail. Like you almost kind of like put it back on them. I mean, I got off a call with another company that's like, yeah, we're trying to go live in August. And I was like, so do you have like a design? Like they're asking us to do an integration. The reason we got in touch with them is because it was Infor, but it wasn't Infor SX. So we would have to translate some of the things that we did for their specific version. They're in an old version that doesn't have APIs.
Oh.
It doesn't have APIs. And then they want this crazy CPQ module integrated into it. And so, yeah, like, which is a whole separate, really complicated thing that we didn't even have time to get like deep into. And they want this all live in August. And they don't even have anything yet. Like there's nothing like,
you know, what I, and I'll
laugh because you know that's impossible, but they didn't know that. Like I literally was like, guys, I hate to be the one telling you this, but I don't think August is possible.
And that goes back, Timothy. I'll let you speak. Quickly, I'd like to say is that it goes back to not having somebody in those conversations within that business that understands that you need to have a strategy. You need to do. Listen, we had over 1,100 mods in SXE, that enhancements, 1,100.
Wow.
And why was it 1,100? It's because, you know, there's different parts of the business that need different things, right? And so, you know, if you're not having those conversations with the vendor and understanding really what the back end, like what's happening there, yeah, it can be a scary project.
I mean, one other thing I was just going to add quickly to this piece of the conversation is that one of the things that we've seen is that you have to do timeout. You know, you basically say, guys, all right, we're having great conversation and I get it, but let's talk about the pace of change, right? You know, how much things change and how quickly they change and how prepared you are to deal with it. Like, you know, 3 years from now versus, you know, whatever, right? You just set that stage. And then second, you bring in, you know, the other part of the conversation. It's like, okay, right, now you understand that. We all agree and everyone in this room understands that things change and are going to continue to change. So what have you got in place to continually review, right?
Right.
Who do you have? How do you approach it? How much are you budgeting? So when they say, I can only spend $64,000 and it's happening once and then I'll get back to you, you know, then the conversation completely changes. Like, okay, this is phase one. And we understand that you have this budget and this is how things may have to work, but it's only phase one. And we're going to continue to talk about these things and how you build for the future, right? And that's really a lot of these conversations go to.
Yeah, we're trying to get people to think of more of an iterational approach, like an MVP approach. Like, we'll get you up and running with something. I mean, in theory, we could stand up a platform with very little time. It's just going to look like kind of a blank install. And it's not going to have any data in it. You got to get your data, like, you kind of go through these transformations and you could get up and running with something fairly quickly. It just might not be your entire wish list. And we're trying to get people to think more like just iteratively. We don't have to do everything in one giant wish list in 1-2 year project. We could maybe do a 3-month or a 6-month project and then just work on that wish list for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, however long you want to keep improving, you know.
So Timothy, one of the things you just described is level setting. There's a lot of level setting conversations that people don't know about. It just it's one of those. Yeah, just literally just stepping back and being like, because, and you know, I'll be honest with you, with when it comes to this strategy. One, you know, we're going to build an e-commerce platform in 6 months. No, that's not going to happen for what we're trying to accomplish,
that's
right?
It.
Exactly. So let's have a real conversation about what needs to happen. As the e-commerce leader within the business, I know that when we sit down with the team and say, this is the goal of, we want to be in our circumstance, January 2021 is our go live date. So we're going to take our time to be methodical about the sprints. We're going to be methodical about everything. We're going to take our time because we don't want it rushed, right? At the end of the day, we want to make sure that when the new technology is wrapped up and we have beta testers that are using it on our beta website, right? And so those conversations have to be had. And as the e-commerce leader within the business, the one fear I have, Isaiah, with sprint deliverables is there's other people in the business that have other things to do. So I have a committed team right now from purchasing and sales and my COO. I need to make sure that we have all of the different functionalities and their input through this build phase, because if I say, listen, we're going to go live in 6 months, and then we're going to pull the team back together, and we're going to focus on the second part of our project, I'm telling you right now, I know once those folks in my business get busy with other projects, I'm going to lose them, right?
Yeah.
And so that happened to me in my past. And the fact of the matter is, it's really important for me that I'm actually doing what you guys are doing now and saying, hey, I'd like to make sure that in the first 3 months of this project, I need to have so-and-so involved. But when we go into scope 2, I need to have that person involved as well. So identifying sprint deliverables and the different people, but that's a conversation that, back to your point, Isaiah, these companies, customers don't have them many times. They just say, I want to be live in 6 months. And they don't understand in the business. And that's it. They're not talking to operations or anybody. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and we're doing a lot of architecture and strategy in the upfront, kind of that upfront discovery process. And I think that's still very important. But I think it's kind of having that mindset of, yes, you need to do that architecture strategy, discovery up front, but you need some malleability and flexibility in the sprints and as the project unfolds to kind of iteratively, adapt as things change and you learn more. Because what really happens is a lot of companies learn a lot as they're going, in 6 months, all of a sudden they're like, actually, now that we see this, And
by the way, one of the main reasons I have elected, or I want our platform to have pretty much zero customizations, because Isaiah, when something new comes down the road 6 months from now, or we need to add something that you think is going to benefit the business, I don't want to have a code base that is highly customized or has so much mods that it's not even, it can't scale. It's a custom website, and I'm looking for a platform that's going to allow us, with the functionality that's given, to grow and scale and be able to add on widgets in different functionalities. That's really important to me.
You have wisdom beyond your years.
Yeah. No, that goes back to understanding and Timothy, I appreciate it, but realizing that there's things that when you start this journey that you're told, you believe, not so much believe, but you're made to believe you need to have from the company, from your, the business you're in. You need to have this on the website or customers aren't going to use it, to going live and realizing that internally that was a myth. The thing that we actually spent money and customized was something the customer didn't want to use.
Oh yeah, don't get me started on that. We're gonna have to have another podcast on that.
Yes, yeah. So I've had that, and I know we're having a good conversation here. But Isaiah, you and I kind of talked about that. Oh man, that's a painful process.
Yeah, especially with people that aren't necessarily, savvy with this stuff. They see something shiny and they want that shiny thing, but is that going to really? We're very revenue folk. Is it what's going to make you money, right? That's what matters.
Absolutely.
So we gotta wrap up here, but Michael, this was amazing. I hope people learn a lot from this, especially from someone that's been in the ground floor like yourself. We actually have one of our clients coming on next week from a distribution company, and that's gonna be really exciting for next episode. We've done some multi-site customer specific stuff, so I'm gonna get into that with them. So anyone that's wants to stay tuned for next episode. Hopefully you actually stay tuned for the next episode.
I will. And then if you guys do a round table, if you want to do a round table, let me know. I'd love to.
We will.
Yeah, that's a great. We're going to be doing all sorts of stuff, so I'll follow up with you. But thanks everyone. Stay tuned for next Friday's episode. And yeah, we're excited.
Thank you, Mike. It's been a pleasure.
Got it.